So we get some answers to questions around Heather's family from not only this episode, but her appearance on Watch It Happens Live and interviews promoting the show that she's recently done, where she also hints a little bit about what we can expect from the reunion. Plus, we see her and Shannon get high off edibles amid continued tension between Noella and Shannon versus basically the entire group. All of this in this 10th episode of season 16 of Real Housewives of Orange County Recap and React. For those of you who are new, my name is Nick Zangl. Thank you so much for being here. And make sure to say hello wherever you are tuning in from live or on the replay and wherever the live chat or the comment section is. And with that said, we're going to jump right into this recap and our reactions. 1 second. All right. So we are starting with a little bit of a montage of catching up with everyone from Shannon here talking to Sophie, who is in Waco, Texas at college, and they're talking about her cleaning her toilet. This becomes a theme for a few episodes about talking to her kids about their chores. And it's because Sophie moved from the dorm to a house, so she doesn't have a maid in this house. So that'll be interesting to see if we hear any more about that. But then we see Gina with her kids and boyfriend enjoying a meal together and kind of joking with each other. And then we get to Jen, who is busting her daughter Cece for stealing her Chanel lip liner from her Amazon box, which the daughter says she goes through all of her mom's Amazon boxes when they arrive, which is pretty funny. I think she's funny, that daughter. But anyways, we are now with the Dubrow family having dinner at Nobu, the infamous Nobu that we've been in contact with a couple times this season. I think this is the third contact with Nobu this season so far. But the twins are sharing about how they just took their senior photos. And Heather is pointing out how the youngest, Coco, will be exiting elementary school, leading to the other kids calling Coco spoiled for liking USC, the school, because she had just been on their campus, as the spoiled younger children. And Coco agrees, but Max deflects by saying her father, Terry, is also very spoiled. Then the oldest, Max, is kind of pushing it with middle child Kat regarding commenting on her eating habits at the table. And Heather explains in her confessional how Kat is sensitive like her. And then once Max and Terry get up to go use the restroom after the sun has gone down, Heather and Nick try to comfort Kat that things will get better with her and her siblings going forward as the age gap becomes less important as you exit those early developmental years. Then in her confessional, Heather is joined by Kat to explain her coming out story as coming out as a lesbian compared to her sister Max, who had an easier time at school, stating people at school with Kat were calling her the F slur in front of her, and we'll get more on this a little bit later, but they end up humorously seeing Coco willingly giving up her veggies to her sister Kat, and Terry acting like he is not going to pay for dinner and kind of implies that the kids should pay for it. So quick thoughts on this scene, this opening scene. So this first scene makes me start to think that maybe Nobu had some sort of deal with the show or with the Dubrows, either having complimentary food for the show or at least a discount for some reason. And this further adds to my theory about the party we saw earlier this season, the sushi party catered by Nobu, where the Dubrows afterwards were so disturbed by all the wasted food and how they spent $36,000 on this party and it ended early and what a waste. And this adds to my theory because if you could just go for a family dinner at Nobu, which is pretty expensive for what I understand, on a whim, then you're probably not very sad when a party you catered from Nobu doesn't necessarily go as planned. Of course, we don't like to waste, and you don't want to waste money and food and whatever, but just a thought of mine. But on a serious note, it is sad that Kat had to deal with those things at school, and hopefully those kids learn and grow out of that, hopefully because it was only because they were taught wrong by parents or friends or whoever, and it was a learned behavior, and hopefully they can unlearn it, and it wasn't hopefully an inherited trait of theirs. So now we are with Noella, who is meeting up with Emily to get their nails done, and we are briefed on a luncheon Shannon is having coming up with the entire group, being the first everyone will be together since Cabo. Now, Noella is self-aware in her confessional to say she needs to calm down around this group and take it a little bit easy because she cares about this friend group, but pivots to talking about her ongoing divorce, giving an update about the upcoming mediation between her and James and kind of what their goal is as far as finding an arrangement for everyone involved. Now, Emily in her confessional says she likes Noella overall, but can also feel suffocated by her always making things about herself. And then we see an example of this in real time at the nail salon, followed by Emily calling out Noella's snarky comments at dinner to Heather in Cabo, and Noella quickly just owns up to it and kind of moves on. But Noella then Emily points out to Noella then that she needs to sometimes reciprocate what she expects from others after asking if she ever gets some grace, which is something she seems to really want. Is, do I ever get grace? How come I never get grace? Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, the scene ends, but to me, this was another exhausting scene with Noella, but also understandable. And that's the problem I have with Noella, is I sometimes agree with her and then she goes too far and then I have trouble feeling bad for her. The problem, though, is Noella is new to this group. So in order for her to bond and get support from the existing group and the other new cast members, and all of them to be able to support her and feel for her, she needs to show them that they know she is doing the same thing back or giving the same effort back in the event that the tables turn in the future where Noella's in a good place and someone else isn't. So I kind of get where both Emily and Gina are coming from, and that's kind of been my struggle this entire season. But anyways, we are now with Shannon prepping for everyone to come over for the luncheon, but she realizes that she forgot the appetizers, blaming it on her not normally doing lunch, but usually doing evening dinner entertaining. Shannon is then ironing her outfit with the outfit on as Gina and Noella arrive, and they're poking fun at Shannon for her worrying about a rug that didn't arrive on time, as if that's the biggest thing that they should all be worrying about. So it was kind of a fun open to the scene. But an emotional car ride from Jen talking about Emily then arrives with a rare straight hairdo, prompting comments from everyone. And then we have the arrival of Jen and Heather after an emotional car ride from Jen, talking about what we saw last episode of him walking out. And we learn that he actually came back after staying up the street for the night, only to leave again the next day after screaming at her and walking out again. And as they pull up, Heather convinces Jen to walk into the party strong, where Heather says she will help you field questions or kind of shut down conversation about the marriage if you want. But that doesn't last long, because upon arrival, after greeting everyone and after Shannon shares about her healthy eating side effects of her gut and feeling like her stomach is just air, Heather then gifts after Heather gifts edibles to Shannon to microdose on and with, we'll see more of that later, Jen goes right into talking about her marriage with the group, asking for advice from the crew after they noticed that she looked a little bit sad. Now, Heather gives her one last chance to shut down this conversation, because she said initially she didn't want to talk about it, but she just keeps going. And after describing more of what happened of the situation to the girls, Emily says the same thing of her marriage was difficult too, and they actually came out on top by working on their relationship, going to therapy, and creating a mission statement for their marriage, where we then get actually a flashback of the creepy fake death scene therapy thing that David and Shannon did many seasons back. And apparently that's what the therapy that Jen went to with Ryan as well. So luckily we don't have to see that again, because that was very creepy. But anyways, Gina then makes a funny comment about the mission statement regarding her and Emily's friendship. Noella then goes over to comfort Jen before they all head in for lunch. So after a toast, conversation continues around Jen's relationship, where then Shannon is sharing about her experience with David and how there's some similarities between the two. But Noella then takes a different approach by asking Jen if she had a prenup, followed by Noella bringing the conversation back to her current situation about being blindsided and suggesting Ryan might be seeking counsel for a divorce. Jen then continues talking about her marriage more, and Noella then again brings it back to her, again, much to Emily's frustrations with Noella for always talking about her marriage and herself, where they all storm off between courses because they're sick of hearing Noella talk about herself. Heather is then helping calm Jen down in the kitchen, and Emily then joins them in the other room, saying the Noella situation is so frustrating and just something that she is trying to understand, but that's why she's asking the questions. And they are all just venting about Noella, trying to diffuse the situation because it is exhausting. So they all end up taking a microdose of the edibles Heather brought, and everything is now fine and dandy, almost too good. But meanwhile, at the table, Noella is left at this time with Gina, in contrast to her being left with Jen in Cabo. And we get to hear Noella's interpretation of what just happened with Jen, being that she thinks Jen feels relief since her husband left, implying that she thinks Jen wants to leave her husband. Where Gina tries to correct Noella's interpretation of this, saying, I don't think it's divorce level bad yet, but anyways, they all end up at the table, and we get a cheers to Shannon, the host, who the editing on this was actually pretty funny. They made it look like Shannon was a high host, if that makes sense. But let's break down this scene. So first, this whole thing reeked of the Dubrows hinting at getting into the edible business. Somehow, the same way almost every scene from this season from the Dubrows has reeked of them pushing an agenda or pushing a product or a project or whatever. And I keep trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, but in a recent interview Heather did, which I'm going to make a whole entire separate video on, if that's any indication, then even the scenes like this one where Heather is giving marital advice to Jen on her relationship is to subtly promote and give her a way to talk about her new show with her husband Terry on E about helping people with their marriages, which apparently premiered a few days ago. So are we shocked at this point? I know I'm not. But anyways, as far as the fun part of this scene, I like seeing fun, quirky Shannon here. Way more entertaining to watch for me than the whiny Shannon. And it's also fun to see others poke fun at Shannon and her be able to take the joke. Now, as far as Noella going to the extreme on Jen's situation, I think Noella was making a good point to caution Jen about the possibilities given Noella's own situation. However, I agree with Gina and everyone else saying it's a little bit different between Noella and Jen's situation, not only because in Jen's situation, her and her husband both work, but Noella didn't, and she was solely relying on James, and so there's a difference there. However, it does come across, again, as Noella trying to steer the conversation to herself, so I don't blame Emily and others for having the reaction they do to Noella. Just saying. But I also agree with Heather, something she said in a recent interview, saying that Jen opening up about her marriage issues, much to Ryan's chagrin, is brave and helping so many people, and it's very big of her. So I do agree with that statement. Okay, let's keep going. Now, Emily and Gina are having a play date at Pretend City with their kids, where they sit to debrief the lunch we just watched, sharing their frustration about Noella and interjecting about herself all the time. And Gina brings up how Noella didn't even realize Gina was starting a skincare line. And we get a flashback to the lunch we just saw where they were talking about this, which we didn't see in the original scene. And at the lunch, Heather was complimenting Gina and very supportive of Gina when she was sharing the promo photos that Gina had just shot, where Shannon appeared jealous of this closeness between Gina and Heather, where Gina says to Emily that Shannon's products, or in her confessional, that Shannon's products would be named Jealousy, with the tagline of all bullshit, all Shannon. Yikes. But anyways, let's react to this. So Heather, her appearance on Watch What Happens Live also talked about this, where she said, again, like she said in her confessional, there's room for everyone as far as all the skincare lines goes. But is it because she thinks hers is the best out there and doesn't feel threatened by the competition? Or is it because she thinks competition is good and it gives her an easy way to plug her own line and kind of made the best man win? Or is it kind of an in for her to share how much she knows about skincare, since she can say, oh, I've been in this industry a lot longer than you have, blah, 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 blah. Or maybe is it that all three skincare lines target different demographics of skincare needs or skin needs? I don't know, but maybe this also sets up a future storyline of the skincare wars, if you will. But anyways, if what I know is true about contracts regarding promoting products on Bravo, they potentially are taking a cut of all of these lines. So they probably don't care who's promoting what as long as people buy it and they get their cut. I don't know. We'll see how this plays out going forward. But anyways, we are now with Kat, Heather's daughter, and Heather gardening in the backyard, talking about decorating her room, which leads to Kat saying she actually wants to take down her lesbian flag because of a TikTok comment, basically saying that she's, yikes, you're 14 and gay, something to that effect. She shares more in her confessional about not being prepared, confessional with her mom, about not being prepared for people reacting to her coming out, and it's something that you don't know how to deal with until it happens. Heather is then encouraging Kat to be herself in this scene and letting her flag fly. Kat then thanks the support from her family and those around her for making her feel proud of who she is, followed by Heather sharing the difference between her upbringing and her kids' upbringing, where we then get a humorous ending of Kat basically saying, well, I wouldn't have the flag if I didn't have your money, so thank you, which was very self-aware of her. But this scene, there's about one more scene for this episode, but Heather, again, on her Watch What Happens Live appearance, addressed this scene, saying the reason she wants to show this is because she wants to normalize a gay talk. Now, this will be addressed again in that separate video I'm going to do regarding Heather in that interview she did. But I feel like I'm going back in time when I watch these scenes with Heather, and I feel like she's a little bit behind because in 2021, 2022, isn't pointing out and making a big deal about the sexuality kind of outdated. I know Heather's trying to say she's not making a big deal out of it, but it doesn't come across that way. And I also thought we were in a place in society now where coming out isn't supposed to be this huge, grand, big deal. And I thought that was supposed to be a good thing, and that was the goal. But I guess this family is an example of we're still in that transitional state in society where one of Heather's kids had a really easy coming out experience and the other didn't. But anyways, it still comes across sometimes as Heather and Terry trying too hard to be relatable for an otherwise unrelatable life to most people. And they just come off as trying too hard and a little bit fake, in my opinion, still. And also, this scene was where Heather didn't know about comments being a thing on TikTok, which to me came across as Heather pretending to be dumb or trying to be plain ignorant to be able to kind of say, oh, I learned so much from my kids. I don't know. I maybe believe she needed to learn about the new terms around sexual orientation from her daughter and some of the labels. I get that. But to be on social media all these years for Heather and be surprised about TikToks having a comment section is kind of like, come on, really? And also it is kind of weird because here it came off as her playing dumb to be relatable, but she is normally the first one to tell you how much she knows and whatnot. So I'm still a little confused by Heather at this point, which isn't surprising, but it just comes off as her overcompensating for something. But anyway, I don't know what that is. So let's go into the final scene of this episode, which is with Jen, Emily, and Shannon out for dinner talking more about Jen's relationship, where she shares the history we've already heard this season about her and Ryan, and said her and Ryan are now getting better, but they still need to have that big conversation about everything soon. Shannon then shares she is happy to see Jen is fighting for her family the way Shannon tried to, and it appears the reason we are seeing this scene was not only to talk about Jen and Ryan hitting the roadblock, which was the reason that they first were attracted to each other, but also because Shannon asks Emily in the group who they've seen since the last lunch with all of them, and Emily shares she saw Gina at the Pretend City, and then asks Shannon if she was jealous of Gina and Heather's budding friendship. Shannon is caught off guard with this, saying that was kind of an asshole comment and denies that she's jealous, but she starts touting her own skincare line as one of the many things on her plate, but she doesn't talk about it because it's not ready and she didn't want to overshadow Gina, but continues to passionately defend her stance of not being jealous of Gina, which is very hard to believe considering her reaction. But we will see how this pans out in the coming weeks. Then Shannon says at the end that she is not mentioning her own skincare line because she wants to support Gina, like I said. So one final thing about this episode, mostly regarding clarity from Heather's Watch What Happens Live appearance and the season in general, which is Heather was asked about Noella mentioning somewhere, I think on social media, how Heather actually had a Cards Against Humanity game in her house tour on her YouTube channel. And so that was why Noella was confused why Heather would be so upset about that game. I guess was a Cards Against Humanity, but LGBTQ version was given to Max, which Heather described as porn. So Heather responded by basically saying she wants to wait until the reunion to address this because she says the truth is on her side. My question to Heather is, why not just address it now? Unless you want it to drag on for a storyline for some reason. And this to me is more evidence of me thinking Heather is dramatizing things for the show. And also by doing so, she is making a mockery out of the LGBT angle of the gift and the storyline regarding her children. So we'll see how that turns out at the reunion, if it even comes up or makes the final cut. But Noella is standing up to Heather at this point, or Noella standing up to Heather at this point is probably the most enjoyable part about Noella in this series at the moment. But we'll see how this all plays out. So that is all for this episode. Let me know what you think in whatever comment section you were able to access. Thank you so much for enjoying this with me and taking your time to listen. Make sure to do whatever you got to do to show love for this episode, whether that's a like or an upvote or a rating, and do whatever you got to do to make sure you don't miss any other episodes by subscribing, following, saving, whatever the term is on whatever platform you're listening or watching on. And I will talk to you in a few minutes for the next recap and react for episode 11, and then we'll be caught up. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you in the next one.